What happens when a black man helps an elderly woman cross the street, only to face mocking officers who think they own the block? You won't believe how one unexpected phone call turns the entire street silent. Before we begin the story, write in the comments where you are watching us from. You know how folks say, "Do good and good will follow"? Kevin Green believed that. A big man with a kind smile, Kevin spent most mornings before his warehouse shift grabbing coffee for the old men on the corner who played dominoes, dropping a few dollars in their jar without a word. That morning, he saw a lady, must have been 80, standing on the sidewalk near a busy intersection, clutching her grocery bag like it was the last good thing in her world. Kevin didn't think twice. He pulled over, hazard lights blinking, and helped her cross the street, careful, like she was made of glass. She patted his hand and called him young man, and that alone made his day. He was about to head back to his truck when the sound of tires screeching snapped him out of that small moment of kindness. Two white officers stepped out of their cruiser, sunglasses on, walking like the sidewalk owed them rent. The taller one nodded toward Kevin's truck and gave a smirk so wide you'd think he was posing for a photo. "Look at this," he said loud enough for traffic to hear. "Our hero of the day." Kevin felt the old woman's hand let go of his. She didn't say a word. She just backed away, eyes darting between Kevin and those cops like she'd seen this show before. Kevin stayed calm even as his gut twisted. He forced a small smile. "Just helping her cross, sir." "Sir," the shorter cop echoed, laughter in his voice. "Oh, we got ourselves a real gentleman." They circled him like dogs sniffing for weakness, eyes flicking over Kevin's work boots, his clean but faded jeans, the name tag on his shirt. The taller cop leaned in. "You got ID, hero?" Kevin pulled out his wallet, hands steady, eyes steady. His father taught him that. Keep your hands slow, your words clear, your eyes honest. Kevin heard his father's voice in his head, even as the cop snatched the ID from his hand like he was taking candy from a child. Traffic slowed down, people peeking from car windows, some pulling out phones. Kevin could feel the heat on his neck, not from the sun, but from that growing attention, that tightening shame. The taller cop read his name out loud like it was a joke. Kevin Green, and glanced at his partner. "You ever heard of him?" "Never," the partner said with a chuckle, popping his gum loud enough to make Kevin's jaw clench. They started asking questions, like a game they enjoyed too much. "Where do you work? Why you here? You live around here? Why's your truck parked like that?" Kevin answered, his voice calm, each word tasting like dry bread in his mouth. "Helping an old lady, huh?" The taller cop leaned closer, eyes hidden behind mirrored lenses. "You know, sometimes folks use that as a story." Kevin blinked. "A story for what?" The cop gave a slow grin. "For covering up something else." Kevin couldn't help it. A small, tired laugh slipped out, sharp like a broken bottle. "Man, you really think I'd risk getting in trouble just to help someone cross the street?" "Oh, so now you're questioning us?" The shorter cop stepped forward, close enough that Kevin could see the stubble on his chin, smelled the cheap coffee on his breath. Kevin felt the tension coil in his chest, the heat pressing against the back of his neck. He glanced around, saw the cars creeping by, faces behind glass, some recording, most just staring, waiting for the mess to unfold so they could tell their friends about it later. The old woman was gone now, vanished into the morning, and Kevin stood alone, under the weight of those eyes, under the small, smirking faces of two men who saw nothing but a black man on the side of the road, daring to exist. They handed back his ID, but slow, like they wanted him to grab it wrong, wanted any excuse to push it further. Kevin took it, fingers steady, jaw tight, and waited for them to move. The taller cop finally leaned back, looking him up and down. "Next time, hero, mind your business." Kevin didn't say a word. He just nodded once, calm outside, fire inside, watching as they walked back to their cruiser, laughing as they went, the sound of it sharp in the humid morning air. He climbed back into his truck, gripping the wheel until his knuckles ached, breathing deep, holding it, letting it go slow, eyes fixed on the road ahead. What he didn't know then was that this was only the beginning. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how it unfolded. Kevin parked his truck 2 blocks down, hands still shaking on the wheel. But outside, he wore that same calm face his father once called armor. He stepped out, adjusted his shirt, and tried to roll his shoulders, but the tightness stayed. A few folks from the neighborhood were around, eyes sliding over to him, then away. Some nodded, some just kept walking, like they hadn't seen 2 officers turn a simple act of kindness into a public circus. Kevin let out a quiet breath, telling himself, "You got a job to get to. Don't let them take your morning too." He walked toward the small corner store to grab a coffee, needing something warm to chase off the cold crawling under his skin. As he pushed open the door, the bell chimed, and old Mr. Harris behind the counter gave him a nod. "Morning, Kev," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. Kevin nodded back, managed a small smile, but his eyes gave him away. "Rough start?" Mr. Harris asked, raising an eyebrow. Kevin let out a dry laugh, shaking his head. "You know how it is," he replied, voice even, but his hands were still not steady when he pulled out a few dollars for the coffee. Before Mr. Harris could say another word, the door swung open again, and the sound of heavy boots hit the tile. Kevin didn't need to look back to know who it was. Those same 2 officers stepped in, laughter still on their lips, like they were sharing a private joke. "Would you look at that?" the taller one said, looking straight at Kevin. "Our morning hero needs a coffee." Kevin didn't turn around, didn't flinch, just placed his change on the counter, eyes on Mr. Harris, who had gone quiet, his face flat and unreadable. "You following me now?" Kevin asked, the edge in his voice sharp but contained. The shorter cop laughed, a quick, ugly sound. "You think you're that important, man?" They stepped closer, pretending to look at the shelves, but Kevin knew what this was. They were letting him know that even here, in the comfort of his own block, they could step in and drain the air out of the room. "You know, hero," the taller cop said, picking up a bottle of water, "you really should mind your own business out there. Folks get the wrong idea." Kevin turned then, slow, eyes calm, voice steady. "You done?" The cop's smile faded just a little. "Oh, we're just getting started." Mr. Harris cleared his throat, the sound loud in the quiet store. "You boys need anything else, or you just here for the weather?" The taller cop glanced at Mr. Harris, lips curling. "We're good." They set the water back down, untouched, and walked out, boots heavy, leaving the door swinging behind them. Kevin stood there for a moment, the coffee in his hand trembling before he gripped it tighter. "Don't let them get to you, Kev," Mr. Harris said softly. Kevin nodded, but in his chest, it was a storm. They had walked in here like they owned the block, like they owned the breath in his lungs, and every part of him wanted to shout, but he swallowed it down because that was how you survived. Walking back outside, Kevin saw them leaning on their cruiser, eyes on him, daring him to say something, to give them a reason. Kevin looked back, not with fear, but with that tired fire that came from years of being told to wait, to be patient, to be polite, while being disrespected. A car rolled by, the driver slowing to stare. The taller cop raised his hand in a mocking wave. Kevin turned and kept walking, step steady, coffee warming his hand, head high, even as they laughed behind him. He reached his truck, set the coffee on the hood, and took a deep breath of the morning air, letting it fill him, steady him, remind him of who he was before they tried to make him feel small. He wasn't small. Not today. This is the climax. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. Stay to see how the hero makes them face the truth. Kevin stood by his truck, letting the coffee warm his hand while the sun started its slow climb over the block. Those two officers were still across the street, leaning on their cruiser like it was a throne, eyes following him like they owned the morning. Kevin lifted his coffee, gave them a nod. Calm on the outside, storm on the inside. They thought it was funny. They thought watching him was a good way to finish their shift. Kevin was about to step in his truck when his phone rang, loud enough to break the stale air between him and the laughter from across the street. Unknown number. Normally, he would let it ring, but something told him to pick up. "Hello, Mr. Green?" The voice was calm, firm, and unfamiliar. "This is the Office of Public Liaison." Kevin blinked, eyes narrowing. "Who is this?" "We received footage this morning of an incident involving you and two officers," the voice continued, not missing a beat. "Please stay where you are." Kevin lowered the phone, looking up to see a few people gathering across the block, holding up their phones, whispering, eyes darting from the cruiser to Kevin. The officers noticed, too. Their smirks faded, just a crack. But enough. A black SUV pulled up fast, doors opened, and out stepped a woman in a dark suit, phone in hand, eyes sharp. She moved like she didn't have time to waste, like the ground moved for her, not the other way around. "Mr. Green?" she asked, her voice clear. Kevin nodded, still holding his coffee, heat rising up his neck. The officers across the street straightened, their faces shifting from amusement to confusion. They started walking over, slow at first, then faster when they saw the woman point at them. "Officers," she said, voice even but strong enough to cut through the street noise. "We need to talk." They tried to play it casual, but Kevin saw it, the way their shoulders tensed, the way they glanced at each other, realizing this wasn't another morning to waste. People were recording now, a crowd forming, quiet but watching, phones lifted like shields. Kevin stood there, coffee in hand, silent. But inside, a weight he had carried for too long started to lift, piece by piece. The taller officer opened his mouth, ready to toss out a joke, but the woman held up her hand. "Not now," she said, her eyes never leaving his. "You will speak when I ask." Kevin almost laughed, but it came out as a breath, a release, like he had been holding it for years. The woman turned to Kevin. "I apologize for your experience this morning," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is not how we treat people." Kevin met her eyes, giving a small nod, but he didn't need to say anything. His presence said it all. He stood there, tired but tall, while those officers shifted on their feet, under the weight of every phone recording, every eye watching, every whisper of the people who had seen what they had done. The woman spoke with them quietly, but the officers' faces said everything. They weren't laughing now. They weren't leaning back with jokes ready to spill. They were listening, nodding, realizing that the street wasn't theirs to control anymore. Not today. Kevin looked around, seeing neighbors, strangers, folks from the block, all standing there, witnessing something they didn't get to see often enough. Accountability. And for the first time that day, Kevin took a sip of his coffee, letting it warm him for real this time. He looked up at the morning sky, letting himself breathe, letting himself know that he did not shrink. Not today. He didn't owe anyone his peace, but today he took it back anyway.